Hi, everybody. Eve Harrow, and this is Rejuvenation on the Land of Israel Network. Taping this on January 18th, 2019 for broadcast on Sunday, January 20th, 2019, the 14th day of Shvat, 5779. So this show is, I guess, kind of dedicated to Tu B'Shvat, our birthday of the trees, and an environmental show. It rained a ton in the land of Israel this week. We even had snow where I live in Gush Etzion, which was cold, but a lot of fun because it's, doesn't happen all that often. So we enjoy it. And it's interesting because the sages a long, long time ago said that more than half the rain in the winter falls by Tu B'Shvat, something that has been borne out by modern meteorological records. And so it was great to see, we're getting in, just a little more, just right before Tu B'Shvat, we're getting in just a little more to hopefully continue with the rainy winter that we have. It's also interesting that a lot of our holidays start or are on the 15th of the month, which is the time of the Jewish month that there's the full moon. So we have Tu B'Shvat, the 15th of Shvat for the trees, Tu B'Av, the summer holiday, that's probably the grape or the wine harvest of the ancient day. Not probably, it is. Sukkot also starts on the 15th of the month, as does Passover. So the only one that doesn't is Shavuot. And so I think that there's a lot of meaning to the 15th of the month, to the full moon, to fertility, to maybe some clarity, even when it's dark. So I love Tu B'Shvat. Really try and get fingers in the dirt and plant something during the day, either a tree or a balsam plant or just something to keep the land as green as possible and to keep caring about the land, and something that we didn't have a chance to do for a long time. And now we see that she's giving it back to us. And there is just so much blooming all the time, not at this time of year. That's what's so cool about Tu B'Shvat, is that we have the birthday of the trees when everything looks like it's dead and it's a twig and all the potential is underground, just waiting to be born in. And that's really the exciting part of it. But I was in the health food store earlier today to pick up some nuts, and I was talking to the girl behind the counter because there's tons of dried fruit everywhere. It's a custom in Israel to eat dried fruit on Tu B'Shvat, to even have, this is a Kabbalistic custom that's made its way back into Israel, to have a Tu B'Shvat Seder, like a special meal with the different blessings that we make on the different fruits. And she and I were saying how in all the years when most of the Jews were in the diaspora, so that's what we did. We had to have the dried fruit. And even when I was a kid growing up and having carob, what we called boxer, this impossible thing that broke your teeth. And she said, but we're back in the land. Why do we have to eat dried fruit? Just go and have fresh fruit. And she's totally right. So I'm actually going to celebrate Tu B'Shvat by not having dried fruit this year, but by having fresh fruit, because that is what being back in the land is all about, and being able to grow our fruit again and not have to have figs from Turkey and dried mangoes from Thailand and all these other places, which probably aren't even so healthy because who knows what they color them and all that so that they stay with these sometimes very bright and unusual colors that are probably not natural. So I think I'm going to do that this year, and maybe you guys try that as well. I don't think prunes would count because prunes people eat anyway, having nothing to do with dried fruit, but for other reasons. Anyhow, so I'll try and make it a different Tu B'Shvat this year. But I have this is the last interview that I taped a couple weeks ago at Limmud in England with Rabbi Yonatan Neril from the Interfaith Center for Sustainable Development. And so I saved it for the week of Tu B'Shvat because it has a lot to do with that. Their mission is to catalyze a transition to a sustainable, thriving, and spiritually aware society through the leadership of faith communities. So very interesting interview. And I hope that he's right. I hope that people of faith from all different religions can get it together and do the right thing. I'm not naive to feel that that's what's going to solve the world's problems, is the imams and rabbis and pastors and priests all sitting down together and working it out. But I do think that there's something very, very special about leaders in all faiths and the God people, And maybe, at least that's a beginning. It's definitely somewhere to start. Is it going to get rid of the extremists? Is it going to get rid of the people who've twisted what their faith in God should be? No. But we all just have to do what we can do. So I thought it was a really great interview, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. Love to have your feedback, as usual, eve@thelandofisrael.com. And I want to, of course, thank Ben and Tabitha and everybody at the station. And look out for my new website. We're just putting the finishing touches on it, eveharrow.com. So when you listen to this, it might not yet be up, but it should be up really, really soon, and just in time for my upcoming trips to the States. And my calendar will be up there. Early March is going to be all around Florida and Arizona. Late March, Washington, D.C. for APAC, and then Shabbat in Toronto, I'm not sure what's in between right now, but keep an eye on that. And of course, I would love to meet you. Every once in a while, I get to meet people who only know me, at least initially, through my show. And then when they meet me, they're so cute because it's like, oh, we know your voice. It's so great. And now we get to match it to a face. So that's always really, really nice to make that connection. And I hope that keeps happening. It's Eve Harrow, Rejuvenation on the Land of Israel Network, coming up with the interview. Enjoy the show. This is being taped on December 24th, 2018 in Birmingham at the Limmud conference. I had breakfast this morning, kind of, like there's a whole table. That's what you do here. You just sit down at a table and start talking to people with Rabbi Yonatan Neril, who is from the Interfaith Center for Sustainable Development, which I thought was a fascinating topic. And I hope my listeners, I hope you feel the same. I'm sure you'll let me know if you don't. eve@thelandofisrael.org. So you're based in Jerusalem, Rav Yonatan?
Yes, and I founded and direct the Interfaith Center for Sustainable Development. We're revealing the connection between religion and ecology and mobilizing faith communities to act.
So we're going to cut to the punchline because my listeners have no patience. What is the connection between religion and ecology?
Well, there's actually many deep, profound connections in every religion between spirituality and caring for creation and living in balance. So, for example, in Genesis chapter 2, verse 15, it says that God placed the human being in the Garden of Eden to serve it and conserve it. And that's understood by many rabbis, including Chief Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, the emeritus chief rabbi, that there is an imperative to be stewards of creation, to care for God's creation in many different ways. And so there's a commandment in the Torah not to waste or destroy. Mm-hmm. That applies to wasting anything of value to a person, energy, water, material products. There's other commandments like Shabbat and the sabbatical year that, among other things, they force a Jew who observes them to rest. And the act of resting on a day, 1 day a week, and 1 year out of 7 years is a very profound ecological act because it means that we stop doing. We're not constantly doing when we return to being human beings instead of human doings.
Mm-hmm. Well, then there's no creation involved, right? Which is the point. So what's interfaith about what you're doing? I mean, you just laid out how beautifully it's in the Torah, and even one of the 7 Noahide laws is that you shouldn't, every min achai, you shouldn't just pull a limb off a living animal. So there's caring for animals. That's pretty inherent to Judaism, but it's specifically an Interfaith Center. So with whom do you work?
So we work with people of many faiths. Last night I had a meeting next to a mosque in Birmingham with a group of British Muslims of Pakistani descent and Turkish and Indian descent. We have an annual conference in Jerusalem that's an interfaith environmental conference. It brings together Jews, Christians, and Muslims with religious leaders and scientists and seminary students and faculty talking about the connection between religion and ecology, and also looking at practical ways that we can bring this into our lives and into theological education, into the teaching and preaching of existing clergies. We also have a project in Africa called the Faith-Inspired Renewable Energy Project. We're working with Christian churches in southern Africa to deploy solar energy fields on church lands. And we're doing that with an Israeli solar energy company called Energia Global. We have a third project which is specifically focused on seminary education. And we're co-organizing seven conferences in the United States on religion and ecology for seminary faculty and deans. We're doing one in Dallas in March. We just did one in Atlanta this past March, and also we did conferences in Washington, D.C., Columbus, Ohio, New York City. We're planning to do them in Los Angeles and Chicago as well.
So are you coming to this as somebody who's concerned about the environment, and because you're also a rabbi and very invested in your Judaism, so you're using that angle, shall we say, of being able to do interfaith to get people to care more about the environment, or, and it's actually not mutually exclusive, are you using the fact that you're a person of faith who also wants to have interfaith meetings and in saying, okay, this could be a common ground so that we can have a place where we can discuss, maybe at some point at least get to know each other and not be afraid of each other. And this could be like a common safe area, if you will, where we can advance things within the religions. Is it where is it coming from, or is it just coming from both together?
Well, both are definitely at work. That by finding common cause in the issue of environmental sustainability, people of many faiths are able to come together. And by people of many faiths coming together, we're able to advance an agenda of sustainability for all of humanity and all species. In terms of the mission of the organization, we're focused on ensuring that our children inherit a livable planet. And we believe that an undertapped source of action in that area is interfaith collaboration. According to a Pew study, 86% of people in the world identify with a religion. And that makes about 6 billion people. And yet, a lot of environmental action is from the secular community or from businesses or from the scientific community, and religions are yet to get fully on board in promoting a sustainable planet for everyone. So we're trying to make a change, in particular in religious communities.
So a good number of that 6 billion are not Christians, Jews, or Muslims. You also have Buddhists, you have Hare Krishnas, you have others. Are they at all involved in what you're doing, or you haven't really reached out to those sectors yet?
We also do another aspect of our work is what I would call thought leadership. We're very active online on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, and we have the world's largest online video collection on religion and ecology. Among those videos are videos not only of Christian, Muslim, and Jewish religious figures, but also Buddhist, Hindu, Sikh, Taoist, and others, indigenous, who are speaking about this connection in their own faith on religion and ecology.
Because I was wondering, maybe it's already there. For example, like in their parts of the world, which tend to be not so much part of the Western world, where there isn't as much waste. Like I would imagine in certain parts of India, or where people are more conscious of the environment because they're more connected to it on a day-to-day level. While in the West, not that everybody thinks that carrots grow in plastic bags, but you definitely have in a lot of consumption, and a lot of people may be disconnected from where it's all coming from and the price that we're paying in order to do these things that are so important to the Western way of life. Could that be part of it as well?
It's possible, although at this point, it's not just people in North America and Europe who are causing environmental degradation. For example, China, which has 1.5 billion people, also produces half of the manufactured goods for the world. And some
half at this point? Half. Wow.
And so some of that is going to the West, but some of that is going to other places as well. India has 1.3 billion people. India is at 1 billion people, but they're actually likely to overtake China in their population in several decades. And there's also a phenomenon that I recently heard about, that there are ships that take garbage, and instead of trucks bringing the garbage to garbage dumps, ships take it and dump it in the oceans. And that's part of the reason why there is this phenomenon of so much plastic and trash in the oceans, and a good amount of that is coming from countries that don't have real garbage disposal systems. So, and that because consumer society has now spread around the world.
Mm-hmm. So are you at the level of like working with governments to promote the different laws that could be passed so that you don't have what you just described?
Well, I'm actually going to be going to Nairobi, Kenya in a few months to speak as part of a faith-based component of the United Nations Environment Program's Assembly. the UN has recently gotten on board in seeing the power of faith communities to affect change in this area. And so that's an area where our work intersects with, at least with the UN, because we're participating in this UN process of trying to bring faith communities on board, especially in regards to sustainable development.
Wow. So, I mean, the environment is usually associated with liberal politics, which is something, and I consider myself, and probably most of my listeners are more on the conservative side of the spectrum, something that's always bothered me, because why should that be? Right? I mean, like, I live in Israel, you live in Israel. I want Israel to be clean. I love the land. Why should, and it's actually something that I've been bugging some people about for years, it shouldn't be a political issue. It shouldn't be a liberal versus conservative issue. Yet, if you look around the world, and a lot of, let's say, global warming or a lot of those topics tend to be taken on by the more liberal side of the political spectrum. First of all, is that true? Do you agree with that? And if yes, then why do you think so?
So I agree with you that there does tend to be this sort of characterization of environmental movement as a liberal one. However, Pope Francis came out 3 years ago with an encyclical, a book on the Catholic Church's views on sustainability, and that's a very powerful document. There's also evangelical megapastors like Pastor Rick Warren of Saddleback Church in California, who has spoken about climate change and the religious basis for taking action. I don't think this is a liberal conservative issue. It's a religious issue. It's about God's creation. It's about care for our common home. And my organization also has another project called a Creation Care Speakers Bureau, of where we bring Orthodox rabbis from Israel to speak about creation care in megachurches elsewhere. These rabbis these Orthodox rabbis are people who are steeped in Jewish tradition and have spent many years learning in yeshivot and Jewish studies institutes, and at the same time they're very connected to the land of Israel, and they realize that God gave us a holy land, and that means that we have a responsibility to protect it. Mm-hmm. And even more broadly, the earth is God's creation, and for humanity to despoil God's earth is an affront to God. And us, as religious adherents, have an obligation to protect God's creation.
Well, that's a beautiful thing. I know that, like in Israel, organic farming was actually born in a religious kibbutz, in Kibbutz Eliyahu, where they, for the same reason, Mario Levi, who recently passed away, an Italian Jew who came to Israel, said, how can we be putting pesticides and all these chemicals in this land that we love so much? It's making the land sick, it's making us sick, and came up with these ideas for organic farming. So you're telling me that if someone's listening and they belong to a church, they can invite an Orthodox rabbi in to talk about the environment, but with using Torah quotes or via the Torah? How does that work exactly?
That's right. In other words, these rabbis have a strong background in Torah, in Bible, and also in ecological sustainability in the land of Israel. And they are prepared to speak on a number of topics about water in the land of Israel and God's blessing of water, and also the importance of conserving it, and about energy and how we're using energy in the land of Israel, and about agriculture and the 7 species of the land, and how all of this ties into to healthy food, healthy air, healthy communities, a vibrant and thriving people and land together.
Do you speak I imagine you speak then in synagogues also. You mentioned you were here in a mosque last night, that you go to churches. How is this accepted in the Orthodox Jewish world? Mm-hmm.
So I do speak in synagogues, including in Orthodox synagogues. I've spoken in a range of Orthodox synagogues in Israel as well as outside of Israel. Some Orthodox Jews are surprised in hearing this, because many of them, it's the first time hearing this connection. At the same time, when I speak in Orthodox synagogues, and I'm basing it on Jewish sources, and so in reading many of these Jewish sources from Maimonides and Nachmanides and Rav Sadia Gaon, and from the Talmud and Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, just reading the sources in the original text is enough to indicate that it's not coming from me. I'm not inventing this idea that there is a connection between Torah and ecology. It's very clear in reading hundreds of sources that this is organic to the Jewish tradition, and that's the case with many other religions as well. That because in pre-modern societies, for example, Moses was a shepherd, and God chose Moses to be the leader of the Jewish people because he showed compassion toward a lamb that ran away in the desert. That's a Jewish teaching. David was a shepherd, and David was chosen to be the king of Israel because he was also compassionate. Abraham was a shepherd. Jacob was a shepherd. The 12 tribes were shepherds. The Jewish people, the Israelites, descend from shepherds. In the last verse of the Hanukkah song, Ma'ut Tzur, the song ends by saying, "Establish for us the 7 shepherds." There's some, and Rav Kook, Rabbi Abraham Isaac Cohen Kook, the first rabbi of pre-state Israel, talks about shepherd consciousness, of how being out in nature gave Abraham, Jacob, Moses, David the ability to be connected to God through the medium of God's creation.
Well, we're born in the desert. I mean, Sinai is in the desert, and if when you speak Hebrew, also midbar v'ledaber, those are the words are to speak and to hear, and is a beautiful desert idea. So it's all there. We just have to find it. Have you written a book? Like, how can people find out about your work?
Yeah, so I've actually written and edited 2 books. One is called Eitz Chaim Hi, a Torah commentary on the weekly Torah portion on ecology. That's available online through Konfei Nesharim, a Jewish environmental organization. A second book is available on Amazon. It's called Uplifting People and Planet, 18 Essential Jewish Teachings on the Environment. And I'm now working on a third book, which is going to be the first ever ecological spiritual commentary on the Hebrew Bible. There exists for Christians a book called the Green Bible, and that's a book where someone highlighted in green verses of ecological relevance. What we're doing, my team and I, is we're creating an ecological commentary in which we actually have a paragraph commentary that relates to ecology and spirituality on hundreds of verses in the Hebrew Bible. Wow. Going from the first chapter of Genesis to the end of Deuteronomy.
Wow, that's really incredible. We only have a few minutes. Someone's coming in to take over the room, as people can hear the voices in the background. Has living in Israel, I know you told me before you've lived in Israel for a long time, has living in Israel inspired you in this? Again, because it's the Holy Land, and because, I don't know if other countries have, like we have the 7 species, the biblical species, and our holidays are all around the species, and we see them growing, and we enjoy the holidays. Do you think that has being connected to Judaism in a different way because you're back in the land? Do you think that's what helped you in finding this career path that you're on now?
Definitely. God said to Abraham, walk the width and breadth of the land. And I've been in Israel now for close to 16 years, most of my adult life. And I've had the privilege and the good fortune of walking a lot of the Israel Trail, many different segments, and the Golan Trail, and also camping by myself. My wife and I, after we got married, we went on our honeymoon in the desert in Israel.
Wow.
We went backpacking for about a week, and to take in the land, and that's very special. It's such a special land. It's such a beautiful land. It has microclimates that essentially mimic the different climates of the whole world. You have very lush vegetation and great rainfall, and then you have very arid and desert, and everything in between, and you have old growth trees and woodlands and caves and the sea and the lowest point on earth and the Dead Sea. It's just amazing.
It's a smorgasbord. That's what I call Israel. A little bit, a taste of everything. Yes. Absolutely. Well, my listeners can't see your face and how animated you are talking about this. Take my word for it, though. So thank you for sitting with me, and this was great. It's something I'd never really thought about. And I recycle all my glass and all my plastic, and I keep a bucket in my shower to catch that first bucket of water before it gets warm. So I just do that in my life. But it's nice to know that it's like a Torah thing as well. It's not just, an awareness, but it's actually part and parcel of God's creation and how we have to keep it. So thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. Many blessings.
Thank you. Okay, everybody. Eve Harrow, Rejuvenation on the Land of Israel Network. Eve at thelandofisrael.com. And always, thanks to Tabitha and to Ben and to Ari and Jeremy and everyone else at the station who make this broadcast possible.
If you want to improve relations between Israel and American Jews, one of the things that you should do is encourage people to listen to the Land of Israel Network. Listen to Eve Harrow, and listen to Yishai Fleischer, and listen to Ari and Jeremy, and Shlomo Katz, and listen to Mike Foyer, and listen to Josh Haston, because the Land of Israel Network has a mission, and that's to spread love between Israel and American Jews. There's so much to love about Israel. There's so much to love about Israelis. And I think the Land of Israel Network is part of the solution. You are all part of the solution.
You're listening to the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com, broadcasting the truth and beauty of Israel to the world.